Korean Mafia boss got trapped in an elevator with the nanny until dawn arrived. Welcome back, everyone. If you enjoy dramatic romance stories with danger, secrets, and big emotional twists, make sure you subscribe, hit like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next upload. And tell me in the comments, what state are you watching from today? Now let's begin. Seoul, South Korea, where neon reflections dance on rain-slicked streets, and the richest towers cast the longest shadows. In this city, power didn't only live in boardrooms. It lived in back alleys, in private clubs, in quiet handshakes that could change a life or end one. And in Seoul's hidden world, one name didn't get spoken casually: Kang Jae-won. At 32, Jae-won was the youngest chairman the BO syndicate had ever crowned. People called him the ghost of Gangnam, not because he moved like smoke, but because once he decided you were a problem, you simply stopped existing. He lived above the city he controlled, inside a penthouse perched on the 63rd floor of one of Seoul's tallest buildings. Floor-to-ceiling glass, minimalist luxury, security systems that could make a military bunker jealous. From up there, the city looked like a glittering toy. But Jae-won didn't see beauty. He saw territory, and most nights, he saw nothing else, because power is loud outside, but painfully quiet at home. That loneliness had become his routine. The silence was predictable, safe, clean, until the day she arrived. Her name on the agency file was Park Soo-min, 25. No criminal record, no emergency contact listed, references that looked fine, nothing that screamed trouble. But Jae-won had built his life on one rule: if it looks too clean, somebody scrubbed it. Soo-min showed up on a rainy Tuesday morning with a worn folder clutched to her chest and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in weeks. Her clothes weren't torn, but they were tired, like they'd been washed 1,000 times and never fully dried. She bowed the way poor people do when they're trying not to take up space. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse, and she stepped into a world she had only ever seen on screens. Quiet marble, sharp lines, cool lighting that made everything feel expensive and untouchable. A man in a crisp black suit met her by the entryway. His posture was strict, his face emotionless. "You're the new housekeeper?" he asked. Soo-min bowed again. "Yes, sir. Park Soo-min. The agency sent me." "I'm Secretary Yoon," he said, studying her like she was a tool he needed to evaluate. "You will follow every rule exactly as explained. There are no second chances here. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." He handed her a printed sheet. Duties on one side, restrictions on the other. No phone during working hours. No questions about Mr. Kang's business. No visitors. No entering the study. No speaking unless spoken to. Soo-min's lips pressed into a thin line. "I understand," she said quietly, and then, almost too calmly, added, "I'm here to work, nothing else." Secretary Yoon's eyebrow twitched at her interruption, but he said nothing. He simply gestured for her to follow. The tour took 20 minutes. The kitchen looked like it belonged in a luxury catalog. The living room was spotless. The guest rooms looked untouched, like no one had ever laughed inside them. And at the end of a long hallway, there was a heavy wooden door. "The study," Secretary Yoon said, voice lowering. "You do not clean it. You do not touch it. You do not look at it. Understood?" Soo-min nodded. Understood. Her shift was 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., Sundays off. Her sleeping quarters were a small service room behind the kitchen, clean, narrow, functional. "Is everything clear?" Secretary Yoon asked. "Yes, sir." "Then you may begin." And just like that, Soo-min's new life started. For the first 2 weeks, she barely saw her employer. Jae-won was a shadow inside his own home, leaving before sunrise, returning long after midnight. She only knew he existed because of the traces he left behind: a coffee cup in the sink, a jacket tossed over a chair, the faint scent of expensive cologne lingering in the air like a warning. Soo-min kept the penthouse perfect. She cooked what she guessed he preferred: simple Korean breakfasts, prepared with quiet precision. She worked like someone who could not afford mistakes. When her shift ended, she returned to her small room and counted the days until her first paycheck like it was a lifeline. She thought she was invisible. She wasn't. Jae-won noticed her from day one. Not because she was loud, she wasn't, but because she was controlled. He watched her through security feeds, watched the way she bowed too deeply, watched the way her hands shook for half a second when Secretary Yoon handed her the rules, watched her swallow fear without letting it spill onto her face. Jae-won had spent his entire adult life reading people. Fear had textures, lies had patterns, desperation had smells. Soo-min wasn't lying exactly, but she was hiding something, and that bothered him more than it should have. The first time they spoke was 3 weeks after her arrival. It was 5:30 a.m. Sumin was in the kitchen, plating side dishes with practiced care. She moved quietly, like sound itself was dangerous. Then she felt it, a presence behind her. She turned and froze. Kang Jae-won stood in the doorway in a black suit, hair neat, face unreadable, but his eyes, those cold, measuring eyes, felt like they were stripping her down to the truth. "You're early," he said. Sumin bowed fast. "I'm sorry if I disturbed you, sir. I didn't realize you were home." "I'm always home," he said flatly. She didn't know what to do with that, so she said nothing. He walked into the kitchen. Instinctively, she stepped back. "Of course," he noticed. "You've been here 3 weeks," he said, pouring coffee from the pot she had prepared. "Most people don't last that long." "I need the job, sir." "Why?" The word was simple, but it carried weight. It wasn't curiosity, it was a test. Sumin's heart sped up. She had rehearsed answers for this moment 100 times. "I have debts," she said carefully. "Family obligations." Jae-won sipped coffee, eyes locked on her over the rim of the cup. "Family obligations," he repeated. "That's vague." "It's the truth," she said. "Is it?" Silence stretched. Sumin kept her eyes down, hands clasped. She could feel him dissecting her, searching for weak spots. Finally, he set down the cup. "Breakfast looks good," he said. Then he left as quietly as he'd appeared, leaving her alone with shaking hands and a heart that wouldn't calm down. After that morning, he started appearing more often. At first, it looked like coincidence. He'd be in the living room when she dusted. He'd walk through the kitchen while she cooked. He'd emerge from the hallway just as she finished cleaning it. But nothing about Kang Jae-won was accidental. Secretary Yoon noticed immediately. In 5 years of service, he had never seen Jae-won show interest in staff. They were furniture to him, replaceable. Now Jae-won was asking questions. One night, without looking up from documents, he said, "What do we know about the new housekeeper?" Secretary Yoon checked his tablet. "Park Soo-min, 25, born in Busan, moved to Seoul 4 years ago. No criminal record, no known affiliations, previously employed at a restaurant before being placed by the agency. References were satisfactory. Parents deceased. No siblings. No emergency contact listed." Jae-won's pen stopped moving. "No emergency contact," he murmured. "No family, no ties." On paper, Sumin was exactly what she appeared. A lonely young woman trying to survive Seoul. But Jae-won didn't survive this long by trusting paper. "Have her followed," he said. Secretary Yoon hesitated. "Sir, may I ask if there's a specific concern?" Jae-won finally looked up. In his eyes there was something Secretary Yoon didn't expect. Not suspicion. Curiosity. "No specific concern," Jae-won said. "I want to know who lives in my home." Secretary Yoon bowed. "Understood." Within days, reports arrived. Soo-min left every Sunday at exactly 9 in the morning. She took the subway to a modest neighborhood on the east side of Seoul, far from Gangnam's polished glass. She entered a small apartment building and didn't emerge for hours. "Apartment complex," Secretary Yoon reported. "Unit 402. Lease is under the name Kim Yoon-ji." "Who is Kim Yoon-ji?" Jae-won asked. "Still investigating. There's more," Secretary Yoon added. "She visits a pharmacy twice a week. The purchases are unusual. Prescription medication in quantities that suggest they're not for her." "What kind?" "Chronic illness treatment," Secretary Yoon said. "Cardiac-related." Jae-won's jaw tightened. "Continue surveillance," he said. "I want everything." Soo-min had no idea she was being watched. Her weekdays were routine. Silent labor, strict rules, careful obedience. But Sundays were different. On Sundays, she became herself. She woke early, put on her cleanest clothes. Nothing fancy, but bright enough to feel human. She rode the subway across the city, watching neighborhoods transform from luxury to ordinary to worn down. Then she reached the 4th floor, Unit 402. Before she could knock, the door flew open. Soo-min Unni, a small girl, launched herself at Soo-min's legs, barely 5 years old, bright eyes. A laugh like sunlight. Soo-min dropped down and hugged her, and for the first time all week, real joy cracked through her exhaustion. "Hello, my precious," she whispered. "Were you good?" The girl nodded furiously. "I helped Grandma make soup, and I learned a new song at school. Want to hear?" "I want to hear everything," Soo-min said, lifting her into her arms. Inside, an elderly woman slowly rose from a chair, thin, pale, fragile in a way that made Soo-min's chest tighten. Kim Yoon-ji, 72, a failing heart, a stubborn spirit. "You're too thin," Yoon-ji scolded immediately. "Are they starving you at that job?" "I'm fine, Grandma," Soo-min said, setting the girl down gently. "Please sit. You shouldn't stand too long." "I'm old, not dead," Yoon-ji snapped, then sat anyway. Hiding a wince she thought Soo-min wouldn't notice, but Soo-min noticed everything. The illness was progressing. Medication was holding the line, but barely. The doctors had been clear. Without surgery, Yoonji's time was limited, and surgery cost more money than Soo-min could even imagine. That's why she worked where she worked. That's why she cleaned a penthouse owned by a man whose name made people tremble, because Yoonji had once saved her. Soo-min's parents had died when she was 15, killed in a factory accident that took 3 more lives. No justice, no compensation, just a cold headline that disappeared the next day. Soo-min had been left alone, hungry, homeless, invisible, until Yoonji found her sleeping on a bench in the park and brought her home without asking a single question. Food, a bed, a hand on her shoulder, a voice saying, "You're safe now." Yoonji loved her into survival. And then, 3 years ago, a baby had arrived. Yoonji's great-granddaughter, Ha-yoon. After Yoonji's granddaughter died during childbirth, the father was long gone. So the survivors became a family. "Did you bring the medicine?" Yoonji asked quietly while Ha-yoon ran off to fetch drawings. Soo-min nodded, pulling a small bag from her purse. "It's getting harder to afford," she admitted, "but I got this month's supply." "You're working too hard," Yoonji said. "I'm working exactly as hard as I need to," Soo-min replied. Yoonji reached for her hand, squeezing it with the weak strength she had left. "I worry about you, child. That place. Those people. I've heard stories." "Stories are stories," Soo-min said, forcing a smile. "I clean a rich man's house. That's all." Yoonji studied her. "Is it?" Soo-min changed the subject quickly, because if she didn't, the fear in Yoonji's eyes would swallow her. That night, back in the penthouse, Jae-won read the final surveillance report in his locked study. He expected betrayal. He expected a con. Instead, he saw sacrifice. Soo-min wasn't building a secret life for herself. She was pouring every paycheck into keeping an old woman alive and a child fed. People who had no legal claim on her, only love. Jae-won stared at the report like it was written in another language. In his world, everyone wanted something. Loyalty was bought. Love was weakness. Yet Soo-min was doing the opposite of what the world taught. She confused him, and the worst part, he didn't hate it. The next morning, he found her in the kitchen and sat down at the table instead of leaving. Soo-min froze mid-stir, ladle hovering over soup. "Sir, is something wrong with breakfast?" she asked quietly. "Sit," he said. "I'm sorry?" "Sit." It wasn't a request. She set down the ladle with trembling hands and sat across from him, eyes lowered, heart punching at her ribs. Jae-won watched her for a long moment. "How long have you been taking care of them?" he asked. Color drained from Soo-min's face. I don't know what you mean, sir." "Kim Yoonji," he said. "The child." "How long?" Soo-min's hands clenched in her lap. This was it. He knew. She would lose her job. She would lose everything. "Please," she whispered. "Don't fire me. I'll work harder. I'll do anything. I need this job." I'm not firing you," Jae-won said. She looked up, stunned. His face stayed unreadable, but his voice wasn't as cold as before. 10 years, Soo-min admitted finally, words shaking. "I've cared for Grandma Yoonji for 10 years. Ha-yoon came 3 years ago after her mother died. They're not my blood, but they're all I have." "They're not your family," Jae-won said. "They're my family," she corrected, meeting his eyes for the first time. "I don't have anyone else." Something shifted in Jae-won's chest. Something uncomfortable, unfamiliar. "Why didn't you put it in your application?" he asked. "A sick dependent and a child might have made you a more sympathetic candidate." Soo-min shook her head. "People don't hire complications. I've been rejected before because they thought I'd miss work. So you lied." "I omitted," she said, calm but firm. "There's a difference." A ghost of a smile flickered at the corner of Jae-won's mouth. "Is there?" "Yes," she said without flinching. "Lying is saying something false. Omitting is not saying everything true. I never lied to you, Mr. Kang. I do have debts. I do have obligations. I just didn't explain why." Jae-won leaned back, studying her like she was a puzzle that kept changing shape. "The old woman is sick," he said. "Yes. The treatments are expensive." "Yes. And your salary isn't enough." Soo-min's jaw tightened. "I'm managing." "Are you?" She didn't answer because the truth was sharp. She wasn't managing. She was drowning. Jae-won stood. "Come with me," he said. Soo-min blinked. "Sir." "Now." He walked out without waiting. After a heartbeat of hesitation, she followed, nerves screaming. He led her down the hallway to the heavy wooden door. The study, the forbidden room. He opened it and gestured for her to enter. Soo-min stepped inside and stopped dead. She expected darkness, weapons, criminal secrets. Instead, it was a library, books lining the walls, shelves reaching the ceiling, a rolling ladder, a desk near the window, neat, organized, and on the desk a framed photograph. Soo-min's eyes landed on it. Jae-won noticed. "My mother," he said simply. "She died when I was 12. In the photo, a beautiful woman with kind eyes held a boy close. A boy who still looked soft, before life hardened him. She was sick for a long time. Jae-won continued. His voice stayed level, but something ancient trembled beneath it. My father refused treatment, said it was too expensive, said she was weak. Sumin swallowed, feeling the air shift. I promised myself money would never be the reason someone I cared about suffered, he said. Then he turned to her. I'm paying for her treatment, he said. Sumin's breath caught. What? Her surgery, her medication, all of it. I'll pay. She stared at him like he'd spoken nonsense. I can't accept that. It's too much. I don't care, he said. I know what it costs. But why? She whispered, tears suddenly burning behind her eyes. You don't even know me. Jae-won stepped closer, and for the first time his voice softened, just enough to feel dangerous in a different way. I'd like to, he said quietly, if you'll let me. Sumin's eyes spilled over. She had carried this alone for 10 years, and now the most feared man in Seoul was offering help like it wasn't a weakness. The surgery was scheduled the following month. Sumin tried to negotiate, tried to offer repayment plans, tried to reduce the cost by cutting corners, anything to keep her pride intact. Jae-won refused every attempt. The money is nothing, he said. Stop fighting me. And then slowly, everything changed. Jae-won started coming home earlier. He sat in the kitchen while Sumin cooked and asked her questions, not like an interrogation, but like a man starving for something he'd forgotten existed. He asked about her childhood in Busan, about the factory accident, about the years she spent surviving. Sumin, in return, asked him questions she never should have dared to ask. Why he never laughed. Why he never ate with anyone. Why his eyes looked like they'd been awake for years. He told her pieces of his past, growing up under a violent father, learning cruelty as a language, climbing into power through blood and betrayal, and waking up one day to realize he didn't recognize the person he'd become. They talked for hours. Secretary Yoon watched with growing concern. One evening after Sumin retired, he approached Jae-won carefully. Sir, he said, I should remind you, involvement with household staff carries risks. Jae-won didn't look up from his book. What risks? She could be a plant, Secretary Yoon said. A spy, someone sent to create a vulnerability. She's not, Jae-won replied immediately. With respect, Secretary Yoon pressed. How can you be certain? Jae-won's eyes rose, cold, final. Because I know, he said. I've watched her. I've read the reports. I've spoken to her every day. Sumin is exactly what she appears to be. Good, exhausted, stubborn, and trying to survive. That's what a trained operative would look like, Secretary Yoon said carefully. Jae-won's voice sharpened. This isn't up for discussion. Secretary Yoon bowed. Understood, but his concern didn't vanish, because for the first time in years, Jae-won was showing something that could be used against him. Hope. The surgery went well. Sumin got the hospital call while she was cleaning the living room. She answered on the second ring, breath held tight, and then she heard the doctor's voice saying the words she had prayed for. It was successful. Yoonji would recover. She would live. She would have time. Sumin hung up and broke. She collapsed onto the designer sofa, sobbing with the kind of relief that hurts. That's how Jae-won found her. He stopped in the doorway, uncertain. Then he crossed the room and sat beside her. Good news or bad? He asked quietly. Sumin looked up, tears streaking her face. Good, she whispered. Good news. She's going to be okay, because of you. Before she could think, before fear could stop her, she threw her arms around him. Jae-won went rigid. He couldn't remember the last time someone hugged him without wanting something, without calculation, without fear. Slowly, awkwardly, he wrapped his arms around her. She was warm, real, human. He closed his eyes and let himself hold her, feeling something inside him thaw that he didn't even realize had frozen. Sumin pulled back suddenly, horrified at herself. I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. I shouldn't have. Jae-won, he corrected softly. She blinked. Sir, my name, he said. Use it. I can't possibly. You just hugged me, he said, and a faint, almost amused edge touched his voice. I think we're past formal titles. A surprised laugh escaped her. She covered her mouth instinctively. I really am sorry. I was just happy. Jae-won reached out and gently lowered her hand. Don't apologize for being happy, he said. Not here. Not with me. Sumin stared at him, seeing past the title, past the rumors, past the terror. She saw the boy in the photograph, and she understood why he had done it. Dinner began that night, not as employee and employer, just as two people sitting across from each other, trying to learn how to breathe again. Sometimes Secretary Yoon cooked. Sometimes Jae-won ordered food from places no normal person could afford. Sometimes Sumin made soup and Jae-won watched like it was a miracle. They talked about everything. Sumin spoke about Ha-yoon's laughter, about Yoonji's stubbornness, about her own dreams, small dreams, practical dreams, like saving enough for a real apartment, sending Ha-yoon to a good school, sleeping without calculating bills in her head. Jae-won confessed his nightmares, the faces he carried, the weight of leadership, the emptiness behind control. One night, candlelight flickering between them, he said quietly, "You're the first person who's looked at me without fear." Soo-min held his gaze. "Because I see a man," she said. "A complicated man, a dangerous man, a man who's done terrible things, but still a man." The words hit him like a crack in the armor he'd worn for years. He didn't expect himself to say what came next. "I'm falling in love with you," Jae-won admitted. The sentence hung in the air like a gunshot. Soo-min's breath caught. "Jae-won, we shouldn't." "I know," he said, voice rougher than usual. "I know it's reckless. I know my world is a storm. I know you deserve safe, but I can't stop." Soo-min stood, walked around the table and knelt beside his chair, like she wasn't afraid of anything he could be. "I'm not asking for safe," she whispered. "I'm asking for you." He stared at her like he didn't deserve to be looked at that way. "You don't know what you're choosing," he warned. "I do," she said, touching his face. "I've been surviving my whole life. For once, I want to live." He leaned into her palm like a man dying of thirst, and then he kissed her, gentle at first, uncertain, like he was afraid she'd disappear. But she pulled him closer, and the kiss turned into a promise neither of them was ready to name. Their relationship didn't stay secret for long. In an organization built on whispers and surveillance, nothing stays hidden. The ghost of Gangnam had taken a lover, not a politician's daughter, not a wealthy heiress, not a woman chosen for strategy, a nanny, a former housekeeper, a nobody. Some called it weakness, proof their leader had gone soft. Others watched the way Jae-won's eyes softened when Soo-min entered a room and wondered, quietly, if maybe this was the first time their leader had ever wanted to be human. Secretary Yoon fell somewhere in between. One morning Jae-won caught his expression and asked, "You're worried." "It's not my place," Secretary Yoon said. "It is," Jae-won replied. "Speak." Secretary Yoon hesitated, then said, "Your feelings make you vulnerable. Enemies will see her as a target, and if something happens to her," Jae-won's face went still, "it will destroy you." Secretary Yoon finished. Jae-won was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I've spent my life eliminating weakness, trusting no one, calculating everything." His voice was low. "Do you know what it got me?" Secretary Yoon didn't answer. "Power," Jae-won said. "Survival. And emptiness." He looked out at the city beyond the glass. "She makes me want to be better," he said. "I won't give that up." Secretary Yoon bowed. "Then I will protect her." Spring turned to summer. Soo-min moved out of the service room and into Jae-won's bedroom. She no longer cleaned for wages. Jae-won insisted. Instead, she focused on Yoonji's recovery and Ha-yoon's life. Jae-won relocated them to a safer apartment near good hospitals and schools. Ha-yoon adored him instantly. She called him boss uncle like it was the most normal thing in the world and demanded piggyback rides with absolute authority. Jae-won pretended to be annoyed. Soo-min caught him smiling every time. Yoonji was more cautious. During one visit, while Ha-eun napped, Yoonji took Soo-min's hand and said, "He's dangerous." "I know," Soo-min replied. "Do you?" Yoonji asked sharply. "Because the girl I raised knew better than to fall in love with monsters." Soo-min squeezed her hand back. "He's not a monster," she said. "He's done monstrous things, but he's trying to be better." Yoonji sighed. "I said the same thing about your grandfather, and you loved him," Soo-min whispered. "I did," Yoonji admitted, "and loving him was the hardest thing I ever did." Soo-min's eyes didn't flinch. "Some things are worth it." Yoonji studied her, this stubborn, loving girl she had rescued from a park bench, and finally said, "Then be careful, and if he ever makes you cry." Soo-min smiled weakly. "I know. You'll hurt him." Yoonji's mouth tightened. "I don't care how many men he commands." Soo-min hugged her. "I know." Winter arrived, and with it, the first real test. A rival organization, the Hwang clan, had been pressing into BO territory for months. Jae-won responded with restraint, trying to avoid a citywide war. But the Hwang leader, Hwang Jun-sik, was ambitious and reckless men look for shortcuts. He found one in Soo-min. "The ghost has a woman," Jun-sik said, spreading photos across a table. Grainy surveillance shots of Soo-min with Ha-eun, Soo-min helping Yoonji into a clinic, Soo-min laughing in a way Jae-won's enemies had never seen near him. "A cleaner," someone scoffed. Jun-sik smiled. "Thin and ugly. A weakness." His second-in-command frowned. "You're suggesting we take her?" "I'm suggesting we break him," Jun-sik said. "Taking her is just the method." The plan moved fast. Soo-min was leaving the hospital after Yoonji's follow-up appointment. The winter air stung her cheeks, and she was checking her phone for messages from Jae-won, because he always checked in now, always made sure she was safe. The van pulled up like a scream. She didn't even have time to react. Arms grabbed her from behind. A hand clamped over her mouth. The world tilted, spun, and then she was thrown into darkness. Doors slammed. Tires screamed. Soul disappeared behind her. It was over in under 30 seconds. Jae-won got the call 20 minutes later. He was in a meeting with financial advisors. Legitimate business, polished suits, clean hands. When Secretary Yoon burst into the room, face pale, one look told Jae-won everything. What happened? Jae-won's voice was ice. Miss Park has been taken, Secretary Yoon said. The room turned cold. The advisors shifted uncomfortably. Leave, Jae-won said. They left quickly, not understanding why their client suddenly looked like death. When the door shut, Jae-won stood. Who? Hwang Jun-sik, Secretary Yoon said. He's claiming responsibility. He's demanding. Secretary Yoon swallowed. All your territories, he said, in exchange for her life. Jae-won's hands curled into fists. Where is she? We're working on it. I want every resource, Jae-won said. Every contact, every informant, every man. Sir, Secretary Yoon warned, if we mobilize that aggressively, it will be war. Then it will be war, Jae-won said. Secretary Yoon had never seen him like this. Not the calm strategist, not the patient killer. This was rage, and it was terrifying. Find her, Jae-won whispered, the softness in his voice somehow more frightening than shouting, or I will burn this city down looking for her myself. Soo-min woke in darkness. Her head throbbed. Her hands were bound behind her back. Cold concrete pressed into her cheek. Dim light filtered through grimy windows high above. A warehouse, industrial, smell of oil and rust, and she wasn't alone. A man stood across the room, middle-aged, expensive coat, smug expression. Ah, he said, you're awake. He approached like he owned the air. Park Soo-min, he said, crouching in front of her. The woman who captured the ghost's heart. I expected someone more impressive. Soo-min forced herself to breathe. Panic wouldn't help. Tears wouldn't help. Who are you? She asked, steady. Hwang Jun-sik, he said with a grin. Surely your boyfriend has mentioned me. He hasn't, Soo-min replied. His smile faltered for half a second. Pride pricked. He recovered quickly. Here's how this works, he said. I send a message. Kang Jae-won hands over his territory. You walk out alive. He won't, Soo-min said. Jun-sik laughed. Oh, he will. You're special. Soo-min shook her head, eyes hard. You don't understand him. He can't give you the syndicate. It's not just property. It's responsibility. Jun-sik's face darkened. Responsibility. He spat. You think I have no honor? The slap came fast, cracking across her cheek. Her head snapped sideways. Blood filled her mouth. You'll learn to speak carefully, he hissed. I don't need you perfect. I just need you breathing. Soo-min swallowed blood and looked up at him with something that surprised even her. A smile. You've already lost, she said softly. You just don't know it yet. Jun-sik's eyes narrowed. You're brave. No, Soo-min said. I'm stubborn. 12 hours later, Jae-won received the ransom video. Soo-min was tied to a chair, bruise on her cheek, hair messy, but her eyes were sharp. Jun-sik delivered demands with theatrical smugness, but Jae-won barely heard him, because Soo-min did something in the middle of the video. While Jun-sik turned away, she looked straight into the camera, and her eyes moved, left, right, up, down, left, left. Then she blinked fast 3 times, paused, blinked twice, paused longer, blinked 5 times. A code, a private joke between them that became a precaution during one of their late-night conversations, just in case. Jae-won's heart slammed. She's telling me where she is, he said. Secretary Yoon looked up. How? She told me, Jae-won said, already moving. There wasn't time to explain. The strike on the warehouse was swift and brutal. Jae-won led it himself, something he hadn't done in years. His men begged him to stay back. He refused. They hit from 3 sides. Hwang guards expected negotiation, not assault. They were overwhelmed within minutes. Jae-won moved through chaos like the name they gave him. Ghost. Gunshots. Screams. Footsteps pounding metal. His eyes stayed cold, but his chest burned with a single goal. Find her. He found Jun-sik in the main room. Soo-min was in front of him, knife pressed to her throat. Jun-sik used her as a shield. Face wild. Stay back, Jun-sik screamed. I'll kill her. Jae-won's voice didn't rise. Let her go. You don't give orders here, Jun-sik shouted. I'm in control. Jae-won, Soo-min said calmly. Jun-sik flinched, surprised by her calm voice. Soo-min's eyes flicked to Jae-won. He's scared, she said. His hand is shaking. Jae-won saw it. The tremor in the knife hand, the fear behind the bravado. Jun-sik's grip tightened in panic, and in that panic, Soo-min moved. She dropped her weight, twisted sharply, forcing Jun-sik's arm to jerk off target. The knife slid away from her throat for 1 split second. That was all Jae-won needed. He fired. The bullet tore into Jun-sik's shoulder. Jun-sik spun, screaming, collapsing to the floor. Jae-won crossed the distance instantly, cutting Soo-min's bindings, pulling her into his arms. Soo-min's body shook now, adrenaline fading, fear finally finding space. "I've got you," Jae-won whispered. "You're safe. You're safe." Soo-min pressed her face into his chest. "I knew you'd come. Always," Jae-won murmured. "Always." Behind them, Jun-sik groaned, clutching his shoulder. You haven't won. My clan will retaliate. You'll." Jae-won turned, keeping Soo-min behind him like a shield. He looked down at Jun-sik with a face that carried no mercy. "Your clan will receive what's left of you," he said softly. As a warning, he raised his gun. Soo-min grabbed his arm. "Don't," she whispered. Jae-won looked at her, confused and furious. "He hurt you," he said. "He almost killed you." "I know," Soo-min said, voice shaking but steady. "But if you execute him here, you start a war that won't stop. His family will have to respond. More people will die." She cupped Jae-won's face with both hands, forcing him to see her, not the enemy. "Be better than this," she whispered. "Be the man you told me you wanted to be." The war inside Jae-won was visible, rage battling restraint, instinct battling the new thing she'd awakened in him. Finally, his gun lowered. "Take him," Jae-won ordered his men. "Alive." Jun-sik's eyes widened in disbelief as he was dragged away. Jae-won turned back to Soo-min, pulling her close, voice low with exhausted amazement. "You're going to be the death of me," he murmured, "or the saving of you," Soo-min whispered back. He let out a breath that sounded like a laugh and pressed his lips to her forehead. The aftermath shook the underworld. Hwang clan, faced with proof of Jun-sik's recklessness and the threat of Jae-won's retaliation, agreed to negotiate. Territory changed hands. Power shifted, but the full war Soo-min feared didn't happen. And inside the syndicate, Soo-min's position changed too. She wasn't just Jae-won's lover anymore. She became a symbol, the woman who survived kidnapping without breaking, the woman who sent coded information under pressure, the woman who talked the ghost of Gangnam down from an execution and probably saved hundreds of lives. Jae-won's men started calling her something new behind her back. "The Heart. They respect you," Jae-won said one night on the penthouse balcony, Seoul's lights glowing below. Soo-min scoffed. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Jae-won asked, wrapping arms around her from behind. "You changed things. You changed me." "I didn't do anything," Soo-min said quietly. "I just loved you." Jae-won's voice turned soft. "That's everything." They stood in silence, cold wind brushing their faces, city humming beneath them. Then Jae-won said the words that made Soo-min go completely still. "I want to marry you." She turned in his arms, stunned. "Jae-won." "I know," he said quickly. "It's complicated. My world is dangerous. There will always be threats. I can't promise you normal." He took her hands, gripping them like he was afraid she'd vanish. "But I can promise you this," he said. "I will spend every day trying to be worthy of you. I will protect you. I will never let you be alone again." He looked into her eyes, those eyes that had stared down men with knives, and his voice trembled for the first time. "Park Soo-min," he said, "will you marry me?" Tears spilled down her cheeks immediately. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He kissed her, and for one perfect moment, even Seoul's darkness felt like it couldn't reach them. The wedding happened 6 months later. Small, intimate, no grand spectacle. Soo-min insisted on simplicity, and Jae-won agreed like it was the easiest decision in the world. Ha-eun was the flower girl. She walked down the aisle with exaggerated seriousness, tossing petals like she was performing surgery. Guests tried not to laugh. Soo-min couldn't stop smiling. Yoonji sat in the front row, tears in her eyes, handkerchief trembling in her hands. Secretary Yoon stood nearby, stoic as always, but his eyes looked softer than Soo-min had ever seen. When Soo-min walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, Jae-won forgot how to breathe. "You look," he began. Soo-min squeezed his hands. "You too." He swallowed hard. "I found you 10 years too late." Soo-min shook her head. "You found me exactly when you were supposed to." Their vows weren't fairy tale promises. They were honest. They promised patience, truth, support. They acknowledged darkness, danger, fear, and chose each other anyway. When they kissed, the room erupted in cheers. Later, at the reception, Yoonji approached Jae-won with the slow authority of a woman who had survived enough to fear no gangster. "I want to say something to you," she said, voice stern. Jae-won straightened. "Yes, ma'am." "That girl has suffered more than anyone should," Yoonji said. "She lost her parents. She lost everything, and still she loved you. Complicated, dangerous, broken." Jae-won nodded. "I know." Yoonji's eyes narrowed. "Do you? Because if you ever make her cry tears of sadness, If you ever make her regret choosing you, I don't care how many men you command. I'll find a way to make you pay." To everyone's shock, Jae-won smiled. Genuine, warm. "I believe you," he said, "and I welcome it. Because if I ever hurt her, I'll deserve it." Yoonji studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "You'll do," she said. "You'll do just fine." She patted his cheek, a gesture both gentle and threatening, and walked away. Years passed, and under Sumin's influence, Jae-won began to change the syndicate, not overnight, not magically, not without resistance, but slowly, carefully, strategically. He moved their operations away from the most destructive businesses. He cut ties with trafficking networks and had them dismantled, by force if necessary. He reduced violence where he could. He pushed money into legitimate companies, real estate, technology, entertainment. It wasn't a clean transformation. Enemies still existed, violence still happened, compromises still made Sumin's stomach twist. But it was progress. Ha-yoon grew up safe, bright and confident. She believed her boss uncle ran a boring investment company, which, technically, was true now. She became obsessed with music, practiced piano until neighbors complained, and lived a childhood Sumin and Jae-won never had. Yoonji lived to 90, surrounded by the family she had built out of strangers and orphans. When she finally passed, it was peaceful, content, warm, loved, and Sumin and Jae-won, against every prediction, they were happy. Not perfectly happy, not fairy tale happy, real happy. There were arguments. There were nights Jae-won woke up shaking from nightmares, and Sumin held him until his breathing slowed. There were days Sumin mourned the normal life she could have had, and Jae-won reminded her that normal never saved anyone they loved, but they had each other. One evening, years after their first meeting, they stood again on the same balcony where Jae-won proposed. Seoul had changed. New towers, new lights, but the city still hummed beneath them like a living thing. Jae-won looked down and asked quietly, "Do you ever regret it?" Sumin turned her head. "Regret what?" "Staying with me," he said. "Choosing this life." Sumin thought seriously, because she always did. Then she said, "I regret nothing." Jae-won's throat tightened. "Every choice I made led me here," Sumin continued. "To you, to Ha-yoon, to a life bigger than I ever imagined. Even the scary parts made me stronger. They made us stronger." She turned to face him fully. "You asked once why I wasn't afraid of you," she said. "Do you remember?" Jae-won nodded. "I said I saw a man," Sumin whispered. "A complicated man." She touched his cheek, the same way she had the night she chose him. "I still see him," she said. "Every day, and every day I love him more." Jae-won pulled her close, her head resting against his chest. He listened to the steady beat of his own heart, something he once thought didn't matter. "I never believed in redemption," he murmured. "Never believed someone like me could deserve happiness." Sumin's arms tightened around him. "And now?" she asked. Jae-won kissed her hair. "Now I believe in you," he whispered. "And that's enough." They stood together as dawn began to creep over Seoul, painting the skyline in pale gold. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. Two broken people who found each other in the dark, and chose again and again to build something brighter. The end. Quick reminder before you go. If you felt something during this story, tap like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment telling me what state you're watching from, because I read them all. See you in the next video.